Blues is one of the most important musical forms in modern history, but it began in places far removed from fame, recording studios, and concert stages. Its roots reach into the deep south of the United States, among African Americans, around the decades after the Civil War and emancipation. Blues grew out of a world shaped by forced labor, racial segregation, poverty, and the difficult transition from slavery to a limited and often dangerous kind of freedom. That context matters because blues was never just a style of music. It was a way to turn experience into sound. It gave people a language for sorrow, endurance, humor, desire, anger, and hope. The result was music that could be deeply personal while also speaking for entire communities. The blues did not appear as a completely new invention. It formed by drawing together older African American traditions, including spirituals, work songs, field hollers, shouts, chants, and simple narrative ballads. Work songs helped people keep rhythm during exhausting labor. Field hollers carried emotion across open spaces, often using stretched notes and expressive vocal bends. Spirituals connected suffering with faith and the hope of deliverance. Ballads preserved stories in a form that could travel from person to person. Blues absorbed these elements and reshaped them into a flexible form. It could be sung alone, played with a guitar, shared in a rural gathering, or later expanded into a full band sound. Its power came from combining memory, rhythm, and direct human expression. One of the central features of blues is call and response. In this pattern, one musical phrase seems to ask a question, and another phrase answers it. The call might be a line sung by the vocalist. The response might come from a guitar lick, a harmonica phrase, or another vocal line. This creates the feeling of a conversation inside the music. The song is not simply moving forward in a straight line. It is speaking, reacting, and replying. This technique has strong connections to African musical practices and became a defining feature of African American music. In blues, call and response makes emotion feel immediate. The voice can state the trouble, and the instrument can answer with a sound that words cannot fully explain. Blues also has a recognizable musical architecture. The best-known version is the 12-bar blues, a repeating chord progression that became one of the most widely used frameworks in popular music. Its genius is that it is simple enough for musicians to share quickly, but open enough for endless variation. A singer can stretch a phrase, a guitarist can improvise between lines, and a band can shift the energy without abandoning the structure. This repeatable pattern gave blues a common grammar. Musicians who had never played together could understand the form and begin communicating almost instantly. Later, jazz, rhythm and blues, rock and roll, and blues rock all drew from this same foundation, proving how much creative freedom can exist inside a simple structure. A major part of the blues sound comes from blue notes, sometimes called worried notes. These are notes that are bent, lowered, or placed between the expected tones of a scale, often around the third, fifth, or seventh. Technically, that may sound small, but emotionally it changes everything. A blue note can feel unstable, mournful, tense, or deeply human. It often sits between major and minor, between happiness and sadness. That is why blues can sound sorrowful without being defeated, or joyful without sounding simple. Singers slide into notes. Guitarists bend strings until the pitch seems to ache. These details create the emotional fingerprint of blues, a sound that refuses to fit neatly into polished categories. Rhythm gives blues its physical force. Blues shuffles, walking bass lines, and repeated patterns create what musicians call a groove. A groove is more than a beat. It is the steady pull that makes the music feel alive in the body. The repetition can become almost trance-like, but it is not mechanical. Small changes in timing, emphasis, and phrasing keep it breathing. This is one reason blues can carry heavy lyrics without collapsing under their weight. The words may speak of loss, poverty, betrayal, or injustice, but the rhythm keeps moving. That forward motion suggests survival. The groove says that pain is real, but so is endurance. The music walks, rocks, and pushes on. Blues lyrics developed patterns that made them direct and memorable. Early forms could repeat a single line several times, but by the early 20th century, the AAB structure became especially common. In this format, the singer states a line, repeats it, and then completes the thought with a longer answering line. The repetition is not filler. It gives the listener time to absorb the feeling. Then the final line turns the idea, explains it, or lands the emotional punch. This structure makes blues feel conversational, almost like someone telling the truth in real time. The language is often plain, but the meaning can be layered. A simple line about leaving, working, or waiting can carry an entire social world behind it. Many early blues songs took the form of loose narratives. They told stories about hardship, movement, love, labor, and survival. These personal stories often reflected the larger conditions facing African Americans in the South. Segregation restricted daily life. Discrimination limited opportunity. Sharecropping trapped many families in debt after slavery, keeping them tied to land they did not own and systems they could not easily escape. Agricultural disasters, including damage caused by the boll weevil, deepened economic struggle in many communities. Blues did not usually explain these issues like a history textbook. Instead, it translated them into scenes, characters, complaints, jokes, and laments. It made social reality intimate, memorable, and emotionally recognizable. The development of juke joints helped blues become a living performance culture. These were informal social spaces where African Americans gathered to dance, drink, talk, gamble, and hear music, often outside the control of white authorities. For blues musicians, juke joints were testing grounds. A performer could see immediately whether a rhythm moved people, whether a lyric landed, or whether a guitar phrase pulled a reaction from the room. This shaped the music in practical ways. Blues had to connect with real audiences, not just satisfy written rules. It had to work after a long day of labor, in a noisy room, with people looking for release. That environment kept blues close to everyday life. By the dawn of the 20th century, observers began documenting blues more clearly, and the first published blues sheet music appeared in 1908. But blues had already existed as an oral and performance tradition before it was written down. That distinction is important. Sheet music can show chords, melody, and lyrics, but it cannot fully capture vocal grit, timing, bent notes, improvisation, or the relationship between performer and audience. Blues became partly formalized through publication, but its deepest identity remained in performance. A song could change depending on who sang it, where it was played, and what the moment required. Blues was never only a fixed composition. It was a form that invited personal truth. As blues spread, it developed into different regional and stylistic branches. Country blues often centered on solo performers with acoustic instruments. Delta blues, associated with the Mississippi Delta, became known for its intense feeling, slide guitar, and raw directness. Piedmont blues often used more intricate finger-picking patterns and a lighter rhythmic touch. Later, as many African Americans moved from the rural South to cities, urban blues styles emerged. Chicago blues brought electric guitars, amplified harmonica, drums, bass, and a tougher club sound. West Coast blues often leaned toward a smoother, jazz-influenced style. These branches show that blues was not a museum piece. It traveled, adapted, and changed with the lives of its musicians. World War II marked a major shift from acoustic blues toward electric blues. As cities grew and audiences changed, musicians needed more volume and a stronger sound. Amplification transformed the guitar and harmonica into sharper, more forceful voices. This helped blues reach wider audiences, including many white listeners who were increasingly exposed to the music. That wider exposure brought influence, but also complicated questions about recognition, ownership, and commercial benefit. Many later musicians built careers from sounds pioneered by black blues artists. Still, the musical influence is undeniable. Blues fed directly into rhythm and blues, rock and roll, and eventually blues rock in the 1960s and 1970s, where its structures were fused with louder rock instrumentation. The legacy of blues is not limited to one genre. It changed how modern music handles feeling, rhythm, and improvisation. Jazz borrowed its forms and expressive vocabulary. Rock and roll took its riffs, chord progressions, and vocal attitude. Rhythm and blues expanded its groove and emotional directness. Even when a modern song does not sound like traditional blues, it may still carry blues DNA, a bent note, a repeated pattern, a call and response phrase, a 12-bar structure, or a lyric that turns private trouble into shared recognition. Blues matters because it transformed hardship into art without erasing the hardship. It made pain musical, but not decorative. It made survival audible. And through that sound, it reshaped the course of popular music. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.